I guess continuing the food analogy as he strains it as much as he can, into a sort of a bigger, broader discussion of this, and we hinted at it yesterday, right? This is, I wouldn't call it new, but it certainly is a growing and supremely important function in and around how, whatever you want to call it, measurement, data, analytics, the idea of how to best or better discern just what the hell's going on with consumers, brand impact, attribution, all those kinds of things requires a whole sort of new set, at least for legacy television purveyors, of data science and a lot more sophistication. It's challenging, but it's certainly amazingly exciting, and arguably will lead to some more very interesting insights and/or applications for this medium that we like to say formerly known as television. And a perfect person to help us create our own version of fruit salad is my old pal, Jonathan Stoyer. I'll let him introduce himself and his new port of call. And I appreciate all of his insights, as well as the 4 panelists that will join him for this conversation about data analytics and television. Take it away, Jonathan, and I appreciate all of you for being here. And yes, you can turn on your webcams now, everybody. Thank you. There you go. This is great. It's just like a bad episode of the Brady Bunch. Isn't this awesome? And I think do we have Jonathan? Have we lost him already? Okay, well, I will vamp because I see a few of you already, and we'll see him come back in a sense. So why don't we just go around the table, and then I'll let him jump back on. And we'll start with ladies first, as we should do. And it's Janet Bayless. How are you? Thank you for joining. And remind our audience, for those who don't know, where you are and what you do at EY.
Sure. Pleasure to be here. Thanks so much, Tim. And hopefully we'll get Jonathan back. He's here, but his computer crashed, so he'll be back.
That's okay.
All right, great. He gave us a nice chat message. He's very smart. So I'm a partner at EY, and for the last several years, I've led our global media and entertainment consulting business, and I am currently our America's customer and growth market leader, which means I basically lead anything that has to do with the customer journey. So everything from our CMO practice and marketing to sales and service, basically anything that has to do with growth. And spend a lot of work across, spend a lot of time working across all sectors. And the future of television has been a particular area of focus for me, and where I had the opportunity to work very closely with Jonathan Stoyer.
Terrific. Who shall return. We know. We're very confident. Justin, you're next on the Wheel of Fortune. Thank you for joining us, and explain your your justification for existence, Samsung Ads, but prior to that too, maybe is also helpful and informative.
Sure. Well, I'll start with Samsung. I don't want to take up too much time with the resume. So I lead global analytics and insights for Samsung Ads. And Samsung Ads is an advanced TV platform that reaches 45 million households in the US, focusing on OTT, television delivered ad inventory, and focused also on incremental reach applications leveraging our ACR data. My particular team is focused on helping clients manage the new TV ecosystem, which is very complex, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, and achieve more success in their upper funnel and lower funnel KPIs.
So perfectly attuned for this conversation. And I will now hand the baton back to Jonathan to introduce the remaining 2 panelists. Welcome, Jonathan.
Hello, thank you. And thanks for the OneDrive Finder integration on Mac OS that took down my entire computer about 7 minutes ago. Anyway, I'll spare you the gory details of that. But I wanted to first thank you, Tim, for having me, and thank everybody else here for joining. I just wanted to say in the panel description, Tim said what we're going to discuss are the vicissitudes of the evolution of the quaint art of media research and analytics. So somewhere between that and fruit salad is what we're going for. Let me, quick intro from my side. I've been doing this media measurement stuff for about 15-ish years. Recently joined VideoAmp, where I'm supposedly driving the strategy behind the company's further development of currency-grade transaction-ready TV datasets for the entire advertising ecosystem, which, as far as I can tell, is basically the same thing I've been doing for the last 15 years. But now I feel like under the umbrella of a company like Kristen's that is really pushing to solve for this globally. And so that's, or not globally, at least in the US as a solution that everyone can use, then we'll get to globally. So thank you all for joining, because you're the perfect roster of folks to make that happen. And I think I still owe intro opportunities to John and Jan, is that right? So let's start with John, just because John Batter, the CEO of MarketCast, he's in the top right corner of my screen, so he gets to go first.
Hi everyone, I'm John Batter. As Jonathan just said, I'm the CEO of MarketCast. We're a market research and insights firm that have been focused on serving the media and entertainment ecosystem for the last 35 years. Legacy of the company goes back to trailer and ad testing for the big Hollywood studios. And if you've seen a trailer or seen an ad for a major motion picture in the last 20 years, chances are MarketCast worked on it. Prior to MarketCast, I was at Gracenote, metadata and return path data business that we sold to Nielsen in 2017.
Awesome, thank you.
Sure.
And last but certainly not least, in the top right of my screen and somewhere on yours, Jan, take it away.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you, team, for inviting me. So my name is Jan Du. I'm founder, CEO at TVision. We are video TV measurement companies with a focus on attention, eyes on screen attention, because we really believe attention is the most important matrix in the marketing industry. I'm sure we'll talk more in the later panel discussion.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. And I'm turning off my virtual background because it was doing creepy things to my head and it was freaking me out looking at it. So I can only imagine how y'all felt. All right. Well, thank you all for joining. I'm going to go through some sort of pre-prepared questions that I've set up with the participants here. And then we'll get letting each of them sort of showcase what they're doing in a little bit more detail. And then we'll start the more conversational version. And last but certainly not least, hopefully we'll have time for a quick response lightning round for which the panelists are woefully underprepared because I wouldn't tell them what I was going to say. I'd like to lead off with Janet. We spent a big chunk of time making some fruit salad together over the last few months, working on the cleverly named Television Data Interoperability and Household ID Resolution project. Very easily remembered and pithy. That was sponsored by CIM, the Coalition for Innovative Media Measurement, just to add some more long words. This built on the work that you'd been doing over the last couple of years, coordinating the Future of TV initiative at EY. And it's one of those fruit salady industry initiatives that that Kristen was talking about and with John on the previous conversations. Just to get things moving and understand sort of the scope of at least one of these initiatives, could you walk us through what happened with Future of TV and the Data Operability Initiative and sort of what we learned and what might happen next?
Yeah, I'd like to point out that we resisted the urge to give it a fantastic acronym or to give it a name that ended with LY. So I think we deserve kudos for that, by the way. So just to share what we did. So starting in April 2018, one of the things that sort of in the spring of that year, what started to happen was everyone was talking about linear, digital, and interoperability in the advertising ecosystem. And what was very clear was consumers, as they often do, lead, and businesses try to follow and keep up, and they weren't. And so, to state the exceptionally obvious, the consumer behavior was obviously fragmented across a lot of different screens, and the marketplace was not keeping up. And a lot of people were on a lot of stages, many of whom I deeply respect, but we were saying a lot of things that we couldn't actually deliver. And so we decided to open up some of the EY real estate on a pro bono basis to just enable the right dialogue so the ecosystem could convene. And so the idea was, let's not be competitors, let's actually become collaborators. So we brought together all the major television networks, we brought together premier marketers, CMOs, and or let's call it plus one, in terms of in their organization. All the major holding companies from the agency landscape were represented. Most of the major MVPDs were there. We had some technology companies in the room, and the idea was these were off the record, no press conversations, so we could sit for 5-6 hours at a time and actually talk about, if that's the headline we want to get to, interoperability, what would it actually take so you could buy advertising seamlessly across these screens and have some form of currency that would work. So we met for every several months, and I would say for every couple of steps we took forward, we took a couple steps back, and it was a lot of fun. But we had, I think, some of the best thinkers in the space who were really showing up and devoting their time. We talked about data, we talked about currency, we talked about what would it take to transform the way we work in an agency or at a television network or at a marketer. And we landed on that the next most important issue to solve. By January 2020, we got to, look, the real thing that we have to get to is data interoperability and household ID resolution. We have to take all these different data sources that allow us to count whether or not a video ad happened. And we, as we very succinctly called it, the counting problem needed to be solved. And then if we could count the number of video ads that happened, then we wanted to be able to at least count how many households had seen the video ads. And then as you point out, Jane Clark and the Coalition for Innovative Media Measurement then engaged EY directly to actually build out a concept architecture for the data and technology that could potentially support that kind of a solution, so that we could start to capture the full end-to-end screen experience. And our primary focus was US focused, and our other primary distinction, I would say, was we were very focused on the television ecosystem as the primary lens with which we were seeing this, such that we're focused on that premium programmer landscape in terms of the use cases we were solving for. So I'll leave it there. A lot more detail to share, and obviously happy to follow up on anything else, John.
Yeah, I mean, it was a fascinating project, and I think it lines up really nicely with some of the other initiatives in the marketplace. Specifically, there's a ANA, WFA, IDFA, EGTA project that's happening that's sort of global on one hand, and then letting local video marketplaces solve for their own. And so, one of the things that I'm now working on with Jane is, and some other folks, is trying to line those up. But again, in the spirit of just trying to get all this stuff to fit together, which I think, at least I believe, is ultimately required for the evolution of the industry away from trading bulk inventory on demos and toward trading targeted inventory on delivery data. The only way we're going to get there is collaboration, and I think you've driven that as hard as anybody.
Yeah, and maybe I'll just share it, because we did go out and interview all the parties, and I'll just quickly just share the quick headlines from each of the parties of the ecosystem. I mean, the first is people of data are willing to contribute their data under the right circumstances, as long as it's secure and privacy compliant. I think in general, I'll say broad brushstrokes. Two, while agencies drive a tremendous amount of the television and digital spend, but certainly on the television side are obviously overwhelmingly driving a lot of that, they're probably not going to drive this change, but they're also not threatened by it, and they're huge proponents of this moving forward, because it doesn't really threaten their secret sauce. Third is, the television networks are working on their own innovation initiatives along this line, then they're working collaboratively with other parties. But at the end of the day, while they're each working on their own innovative initiatives, they do share a lot of common ground on both the strategic and the operational initiatives. And then I think most importantly, because we prize the marketer's voice above all, they are looking to activate much more sophisticated media strategies around this ecosystem, bringing a lot more first-party data to the table than ever before. And they do need an end-to-end agnostic view of the buying landscape. that is not comprised of all the fiefdoms of individual inventory pools with their own methodologies informed by different data sets. And so suffice it to say that that's where we sort of concluded our investigation of the marketplace, I'll just say.
Great, that's an awesome setup and a great summary. Moving on, Jan, I'm going to give you a shot next. You and I have known each other for a long time. I think you began the TVision journey, what, about 5 years ago while I was at TiVo. I think what you are doing around sort of attention measurement and also personification is unique in the marketplace today. So I'd love it if you could just trace the evolution as a measurement company, and particularly with reference to, the type and magnitude of problem you're trying to solve and why it's been so hard to address, why you guys are the only ones out there today.
Sure. Thank you, Jonathan. So I started this about maybe 6 years ago when I was at MIT. At that time, I was very naive. So I didn't know this issue was so complex, so challenging, right? I didn't read any TVOT report or any WFA standards. So I thought, okay, I'm going to create a company. I'm going to solve everything. Obviously, I was too naive, and quickly turns out that was a bit too challenging for a very small startup like TVision. So we decided to focus on attention measurement because I really believe without audience attention, no matter you're tracking store visitation or sales or clicks or whatever, nothing gonna happen. Then let's measure attention. That's like an interesting niche at that time because Nielsen tracks more like an impression, GRP, a bunch of other folks doing like MMM or TV attribution. So we thought this attention concept is interesting. That's how we really got started. Over the time, we're adding like new capabilities. One thing is we started to track all of the like OTT, AVOD, SVOD service, which, as we all know, that's really booming video segment in our industry. For that particular segment, we are reporting some of the impression metrics as well, which is a bit expansion of our service. And as Jonathan mentioned, over the years, we also found that our person level panel TV data actually has a lot of value to help other companies to kind of overlay our data on top of census data to get to the person level second by second data, which I think when I read through no matter MRC cross-platform standard or WFA standard, second by second, person by person is an important element. And we do believe that panel and census data need to be fused, and we want to support industry in that way. So it's been 6 years. We haven't seen other company kind of come up with the similar solutions in the market. I think there may be maybe two reasons. One is panel is expensive and very challenging to build. And then we learned this in a hard way, right? Initially, we thought, oh, this is super easy. We just ship all the boxes and people are going to do this. The many crazy things happen, which is difficult to share all these crazy stories here, but we certainly have dealt with many tough situations. So I think we learned a lot, and we understand that panel is difficult to manage, especially in the context of the privacy, which kind of the data collection is allowed, and how to keep a very engaged, high impact panel. I think that's not easy and much harder than we thought. The second piece is technology. We use computer vision deep learning technology, which really took us initial maybe 3-4 years to bring to a point we're comfortable with our accuracy. And it really requires us to collect the data within our panel, then use that data as training data set to train our deep learning model, which was not easy, and clearly we spent lots of money and many engineering resources to make that happen. At this point, we're very confident we're the best in the industry in terms of in-home attention measurement or people skeleton tracking. But it was not easy, and I think it's rare to have a combination of both panel and technology at the same time, which make our solution very unique. But I totally agree with you that, it really requires partnership and collaboration to solve these issues. And I learned a lot in the last 5-6 years. I think we have some interesting piece solve this puzzle, but we certainly understand that it's beyond any one company to solve this entire issue. So we really changed our approach dramatically over the last couple of years to really work with other data companies, measurement companies towards the North Star this entire industry is aiming for.
Excellent, thanks. Yeah, the panel and big data have to be friends is a theme that I think also came up in the Future of TV, SIM, all that initiative, and as you said, in the other ones in the marketplace. Well, I'm glad when we met and I told you this was hard and you were crazy to do it, it didn't keep you from at least giving it a try, because I'm amazed how far you guys have evolved. And I think, you know, more to come as we all figure out how to work together better. I'm gonna toss to Justin next. Justin, you know, you've mentioned in our conversation, in our prep and in presentations, I've seen the webcast you put out recently, which is great and people should watch it if they haven't. You guys are on the front line of seeing some of the crazy shifts in consumer behavior that have happened both pre-pandemic and then accelerated massively during the pandemic. Can you elaborate a little bit? And specifically, I think one of the big questions in the marketplace is, why aren't the dollars following the eyeballs as quickly as maybe we would hope?
Yeah, when I first started at well, first of all, Samsung is a privilege of being at the glass level. So we're sort of that last mile and we see where the audiences are changing their behaviors. And when I first started at Samsung a little over a year ago, we were tracking the number of what percentage of time was spent in linear and what percentage of time was spent in streaming. And that number was 45% at streaming. And kind of taking the opposite of Jan's standpoint, I had expected the TV ecosystem to adopt slowly. So I'm thinking, including the audiences themselves, I'm thinking, well, we'll set our clock for watching this number tick up to 50% over the next few years. And of course, it was just a couple of months later that we hit the 50-50 mark. And we just watched that number ramp up to 52% of time spent in streaming in Q4, 57% of time spent in streaming in Q1, of course, accelerated by COVID, hitting 63% of time spent in Q2. So in a way, like what has sort of been happening is a crisis. Once we started publishing these numbers, the outreach and the demand for more was immediate. And we ended up having 30 or more sessions with I think it was 600 agency professionals across the US, Canada, and Europe. And basically those sessions were all about essentially two questions, like, where is my audience now? And how can I reach them? And so the good news that we've been able to bring to that dialogue is, listen, your expectations about streaming behaviors are potentially outdated. When we got to know and love streaming was a subscription-only experience, and therefore not accessible to advertisers as a means of communicating. And that alone could be a crisis. We've also seen another element of the numbers that we have that shows that more and more people are streaming only. So all of this kind of creates a crisis moment where advertisers are potentially in a position where they just do not have the ability to communicate with their customer. But AVOD has really risen along with that streaming number. And so now we see really substantial numbers of customers, at least in the Samsung footprint, embracing AVOD, using AVOD. It's up to about 60% of our footprint is now using AVOD. And when they do, yeah, they watch an hour and 15 minutes a day. So it's substantial how much time is being spent there. So we really think there's a message of hope for the advertising community. But in terms of your question about, when are the budgets going to follow the time, we did our own little Mary Meeker kind of time spent versus ad spent metric. And even if you put it at 50-50, it still looks like 10% of budgets are focused on CTV. So there's a long way to go. And I think it's understandable. I think this is really just hitting home in the industry in the last 6 months. And people have to grasp that. understand this data and these metrics and adjust. But we're seeing some great best practices, which maybe I'll talk about in the next beat. But we think the industry is on the path.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, it's completely consistent with what I saw on the agency side, which is, you know, when I got there, we were looking at a world that was, you know, 90-10 in terms of dollars, to your point on the streaming side, and probably 85 or 80-20 on the consumption side. And by the time I left 4 years later, it was more like, you know, 65-35 viewership and still only 85-15 on spend. So to your point, the good news is we're moving in the right direction, and the bad news is we're probably not moving in that direction quite fast enough yet. The other thing I'll say for those who don't believe Justin's claim about how much viewership has shifted, or for those who do rather, every newspaper I looked at this morning or yesterday, or I guess it was just this morning because of when ratings came in, talked about how much lower the debate ratings were than the last 2 times around. Asterisk, that doesn't include streaming. So if you actually believe those numbers about if it did include streaming, it would be 30% higher than it's ever been before. And that's exactly the kind of conundrum that's keeping the market probably from moving as fast as we would like it to. All right, John, finally, your turn. Your company's really focused on measuring engagement and how people are attracted to and interact with content, but in a really different way than Jan's does. Can you talk about how both the evolution of MarketCast in that space, and also your recent acquisition of Deductive, FKA, Dativa, and how that's going to enhance the mission? Because I've known those guys for a long time too, and glad to see y'all working together.
Yeah, me too. Thanks. We are super excited. I think you did a great job describing what MarketCast does. We spend a lot of time with the big studios and streaming services and broadcast and cable TV providers, helping them figure out how to reach their audiences and what products will reach the audience most effectively. I've known Michael for probably a half dozen years. When he was at Cognitive, when he was running Cognitive, and I was running Gracenote, and our smart TV, our ACR technology was in the Samsung Smart TV, LG, and he was in Vizio, and we were kind of beating each other's brains out in the market, just trying to get all the smart TVs together. We tried to do a deal and didn't get it done, and so through all that, he and I became friends and though competitors. And about a year ago, he and I started talking. I loved so I guess just to finish his story, he sold Cognitive to Vizio, probably as most people know, and that became Inscape, and he ran that for a while, and then a couple of years ago, he and the chief data scientist for Inscape took off and created their own company, Dativa, Deductive, and really built a cool team of data scientists right outside of Oxford in the UK, focused on smart TV data and set-top box data. And so, I felt like the work that they were doing with sort of understanding very large data and complex data sets merged nicely with all the primary research we've been doing at MarketCast. And we talked to a couple million consumers a year, and over the last 35 years have developed these really large normative databases, but haven't built out a lot of data points around the folks we talk to that are in those databases. And so the idea of taking our primary research and the deep insights we get and fusing that with all the sort of big data and data science work that Michael and his team do really was exciting. And so
it's another vote for the panel and big data can be friends.
That it is a huge vote in that context. It is, we put our money where our mouth was on that. And I guess just the last thing to say is, we almost had our deal done before COVID, and then we paused for a couple months until we got everybody kind of figured out what was going on, and then got back together and closed our deal a couple of weeks ago.
Awesome. Well, congratulations, and looking forward to chatting with you more about that now that it's out in the public. And I can tell you my stories about working with Gracenote Audio ACR guys on my first attempt at a measurement panel company in 2004, which it was a little early, but hey, we're all still trying to do it.
Yep.
I got a couple more questions, and if we can try to go through these quickly, it'll save us time for the lightning round. Janet and Justin, I've got one for you guys. I came from the buy side at OMG, as I mentioned. All the media agencies, and Janet, you mentioned this, have their own special sauces around not just what data they have, but how they process data and combine it and match it. And a couple of the holding companies have acquired ID resolution and data enhancement companies to do that. How do we reconcile all these special recipes and fancy different menus with the fact that at the end of the day, marketers kind of need to understand fundamental questions, deduplicated reach, aggregate frequency, links to outcomes, that, if those aren't sort of standard counting, I don't know how we have the basis for doing fancy stuff. Janet,
I'll start out. I think it comes back to basic volumetrics, right? We've got to all be able to count the same way. And I don't think it's just about the secret sauce that sits on the agency side. I think it's the secret sauce that can sit at an MVPD. It's about the secret sauce that can sit at an ampersand. It's about the secret sauce that can sit in any of the aggregators across any of these, at any of the network groups, right? Because they've got tremendous scale. You've just got a lot of innovation. And so what I think that the big issue is all of that secret sauce is fantastic, but until the point where we can count video ads the right way, the data that Justin shared is really profound. And I think his data shows how fast we have accelerated that consumer behavior being out of sync with the business that we're in, the marketplace being in sync with the consumer reality. So we have to create just a basic way to be able to count and have volumetrics. And for that, we have to have simple standards and interoperability. And I will say that in all the interviews that we did across the industry, what was fascinating was whether it was a network, a marketer, an agency, everyone agreed that we had to have the basic volumetrics. And that's why there was essential agreement that a place where people could safely enable data to communicate, meaning smart TV data, meaning set-top box data, and other sources in a way that people still felt ownership of it, and that it was protected and compliant with whatever provisions govern that data, that was something that they were willing and able to do. I think that is a critical enabler to the broader ecosystem. And unless we solve that, I find it hard to believe that we can get to the secret sauce, because at the end of the day, the marketer needs to see the full waterfront and wants to know, if I put one more dollar into the marketplace, where can I put that incremental dollar to get, whether it's getting more reach or more frequency or some other KPI that they value. And right now, it's not possible to do that because everyone's selling their metric.
Agree. Justin, what's your take on that? I think you've got a fairly mature product and good data powering it. How do you work with secret sauce? What's in your kitchen?
Well, I think it's a really, really exciting time in the industry, and I actually love seeing the fact that data storage or processing costs are lower, and data scientists are easier to hire. And I think it's exciting to see brands and agencies take data and consumer insights and treating that as their competitive advantage. Like, really exciting time in the ecosystem. I think it's also a really exciting time to be in media because the tools we have to solve these problems keep getting better. I mean, you were shopping for data, TV data in 2004, 10, and the solutions that everybody in the industry have, they now have 20 different flavors of data to access instead of 0, because linear used to be, in effect, in a lot of ways, a black box. And so in a lot of ways, what I've been focusing on is seeing our clients make use of the data they have. And a lot aren't. And the best practices we see is a client will take a really simple point of view that we've chosen an audience. And by the way, not just chosen, we've invested to create an audience. We're going to align every part of our buy in television and video around that audience, and also invest in the measurement of that audience across all of those. And I feel like that's the kind of best practice we're seeing now that's really exciting. And I think that can coexist with a common standard on these fundamentals. I don't think they're in conflict.
No, I mean, I agree with that. I think, and so with Janet, it's the start with basic volumetrics, and then everyone's going to try to show how
100%
they deserve your next dollar. But until we can make a level playing field comparison, it's hard for buyers to make the call. All right, we're running out of time, so the lightning round, I think, is going to fall on the floor unless everybody really wants to do it. But I do want to give Yan and John another shot with this probably last question, and one that's near and dear to my heart. Privacy is a huge challenge facing our industry right now, and especially with new legislation. And I think also consumers finally waking up to the value of their data. So not so much the concern about being spied on, though some people have that, but the fact that their attention is valuable and their personal data is valuable. You know, people think I'm crazy because I think we're going to go fully to the place where that data becomes currency that consumers can trade for media experiences in a very explicit way. But my sanity notwithstanding, can you guys both talk about how you address issues around personal privacy and what your experiences have been with consumers about their concern since you interact with them directly? John, why don't we start with you?
Sure. I think what it does in part is swings the pendulum back a little bit towards primary research and panel. I don't say that because that's the business we're in. I say that just because it sort of makes sense. We talk to consumers. We tell them that we want their PII or we want a key to the PII. We pay them for their time or we compensate them for their time. And so I feel like the combination of a group of people that you know a lot about and have agreed to give you the key to PI and then building out data points is the path to the future. So I think having access to that large sample and then being able to more data is where we think the world's going.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and I think Yan, you probably do too. I think given time, you're probably going to get pretty much the last word here. So, anything to add?
I think privacy, has been very important thing for TVision from day one, just given how we collect the data. And I also think as an industry, we have to give consumer the confidence they can give data to us so we can serve better, no matter it's media or advertising. If we don't have that foundation trust, it's just difficult to run our business. So from that point of view, I think it's difficult to kind of get opt-in from everybody. So that's another reason why I believe the PAN and census data fusion is the best way to solve many fundamental issues we have in the industry.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to continuing to work with all of you in exactly that direction, because that, as I said, remains my job after 16 or 17 years. And with that, I'm going to toss back to Tim, who I met actually at the beginning of that journey.
I remember it like it was yesterday, Jonathan. And It's nice to see you still at it, and all of us, frankly. We're all gluttons for punishment, but this is I appreciate this conversation because this really, I think, has been sort of the most granular as well as definitional sort of conversation around just how sophisticated this stuff has become. And depending on your perspective from where you come at it in this industry, that's either something that you run and embrace and love the challenges, or frankly are frightened by because it's just so complex from perhaps how you looked at the television industry from when you perhaps began your journeys in your careers. But it's exciting, right? It's never dull. And I think it's only going to get more interesting and complex as the years roll on. So thank you all for that. Thank you, Jonathan, for corralling it and a great conversation. I thank you all for participating, and we thank you out there in viewer and listener land for joining us. We of course thank all of our great sponsors who you've seen the logos for, but you'll continue to see the logos for. Please don't forget that we've got one more day of fun tomorrow for you on the audience measurement side, and we continue the Streaming TV Summit later this afternoon. My special guest that I will be interviewing is Marc DeBevoise from I guess formerly CBS All Access and now Paramount Plus, and I think a really good perch, a really good conversation as that gets going in earnest around the Viacom CBS world of streaming. And one last thing, please, by all means, come back to the falltvevents.com website to get on-demand versions of all of these things. Give us till the end of the day today, and this conversation and all the other ones prior will be available for you on demand. Thank you very much from me and everybody, and we'll see you again soon, either tomorrow morning or later this afternoon. Thank you for joining us. See you soon.
You too.
Thanks, guys.